Welcome back, everybody, to the show. I hope you're doing well. Our country's not, and we're in a pretty dark place, especially when it comes to the First Amendment. I'm sure you've heard about this. I will show you Jimmy Kimmel, some video that we got of him, and then reporting about how angry he is, understandably so, because his late night show, his late night comedian, was ripped off the air. And what's so sad is the move. I know we're used to it by now, but the movement of people who proclaim to be the First Amendment warriors are mostly defending this, with some rare exceptions, and saying, oh, no, didn't you say, Luke, that this is just private companies can make their decision about what they have on their platforms? Of course. And if this was just a business decision, or even a personal preference that they didn't like what Kimmel said, that would be one thing. But it's not. It's a direct result of pressure publicly. We have video of it. Brendan Carr, the FCC commissioner, threatening ABC, threatening Kimmel's show, and then it was ripped off the air. And so I'll kind of repeat, I think it's a disservice to make this about Kirk's assassination, because it's really not. And I think if MAGA folks responding really sat with it for a second, they would realize that even if you really were personally offended by what Kimmel said, this is a broader plot that we've been seeing, one step after another from the Trump administration trying to silence their critics. I'll show you a compilation, but recently Trump going, protesters yelling at me should be in jail, which is crazy. But some background, then we'll get to this video and reporting and so many other things. President Donald Trump has used threats, lawsuits, and government pressure, the Associated Press writes, as he remakes the American media landscape, unleashing his long-standing grievances against an industry that has mocked, criticized, and scorned him for years. I take major issue with a lot. I won't spend a ton of time on this, but with the way that a lot of mainstream outlets report on this, like he's remaking the American media landscape like it's a nice remodel. He's attacking it. And it's specifically his critics. It's not like he's doing this broad strokes trying to influence the accuracy of all outlets. It's just him trying to silence his critics. And I think if you're MAGA and you really searched your heart, you would realize that. He has extracted multi-million-dollar settlements, forced companies into costly litigation, and prompted changes to programming that he found objectionable. The latest example being Jimmy Kimmel. Hours before ABC's decision to take the show indefinitely off the air, Brendan Carr, Trump's handpicked head of the Federal Communications Commission, FCC, warned that the broadcaster and its local affiliates could face repercussions if Kimmel was not punished, and then he was punished. So that's the series of events that makes this not... I even think, despite us also kind of knowing what CBS was doing with Colbert, it's even more egregious than that, because CBS tried to make it about, this is a business thing, right? They're not making a business case. This is just, well, ABC executives were quote unquote pissing themselves, fearing Trump blowback, yanked Kimmel despite thinking he didn't cross the line. And we'll talk about the companies that own the local media affiliates, the stations where the show's played. They kind of got the ball rolling on this and the reasoning behind what they're doing. And it, again, further confirms our fears here. One other thing, and I'll show you the video of Kimmel and Guillermo. This is the quote. On the bonus show yesterday, I was like, surely this isn't it, right? Because I'm in this extra sensitive headspace lately, wanting, given how horrific what happened to Charlie Kirk was, wanting to really be mindful of harmful language. And I thought Kimmel must have said something bad. But while you can characterize it as inaccurate with what we now know about the shooter, to say it's worthy of him losing his show indefinitely because of Trump administration pressure is deranged. And again, it's not about that. It's not about a genuine, authentic response from the Trump administration to the words about Kirk's assassination. It's them seizing on a moment. So this was the quote. Quote, "We hit some new lows," Kimmel said on a show, "over the weekend with the MAGA gang desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them." So if you're someone who sees that and goes, that's so offensive, That can be your response. And I just did this whole segment breaking down people who have been running with false conspiracy theories, including people on the left who have been misstating things about the shooter, and we have to be accurate. And so if he's alluding there, even though it was kind of a vague statement, it's not like he said he was MAGA, but he could have been one of them. He came from a really Christian Republican community. So he was one of them in that sense. And then his ideology shifted. But even so, there was a lot of confusion. And so you make an incorrect statement. Maybe Kimmel could have gone and corrected it at some point. But the nuclear reaction once again proves I don't think it's really about a genuine offense to that statement. Now, here is the only sighting we got since this happened of Kimmel and Guillermo.
Live right now in Hollywood.
Let me see.
Where Jimmy Kimmel just left the El Capitan Theater. Robert.
Colleen, it is busy out here in Hollywood tonight. It's always busy in Hollywood. Right now, we've got a premiere on one side of the street, outside of the Chinese Theater, and here outside of Jimmy Kimmel Live, a protest is just starting to form here with people demanding the return of Jimmy Kimmel. It has been, again, a pretty chaotic couple of hours here in the front and the back of the studio where it is filmed. But at 6:19 this evening, as we show you this video, NBC captured Jimmy Kimmel leaving Jimmy Kimmel Live and the studios here. This is the Jimmy Kimmel Live show, the only late night West Coast show. And here it is, Jimmy Kimmel leaving this evening. We believe that is his wife as well, leaving with him Molly.
And I will just add for context, New York Post has this effing livid Jimmy Kimmel sidekick Guillermo Rodriguez spotted leaving LA studio after ABC yanks live from air. And it goes on to explain that behind the scenes, Kimmel is livid, probably because he sees the very executives who made this decision, as I showed you in the other reporting, going, we don't actually think this is justified. We're just scared of Trump. Can you imagine? And we're taking people off air for, in the fog of a confusing moment, an incorrect statement, if you interpret it one way and not just talking about his background, but his present ideology. And you can criticize that, but well, then what about all the incorrect statements constantly happening all the time on right-wing stations? Please.
Two of them then took off, and just about 45 minutes before that, we also saw Guillermo, his sidekick on the show, who I actually spent some time with recently at the Emmy Awards just days ago. He was in great spirits. Guillermo also leaving the premises. So the indications here were, Colleen, when we got here, we just didn't.
All right, it is one thing to go after Kimmel, but MAGA went after Guillermo. You have effed up if you're trying to hurt Guillermo. Guillermo, his whole status on the show is being joyful, and you've made him sad. You've made him sad. You effed up. Seriously. That should be a litmus test. How do your actions make Guillermo respond? I mean, who has a problem with Guillermo? Come on. Now, I do want to add this context too. Jimmy Kimmel had previously said, quote, instead of the angry finger pointing, can we just for one day agree that it's horrible and monstrous to shoot another human? On behalf of my family, we send love to the Kirks, to all the children, parents, and innocents who fall victim to senseless gun violence. So criticize what I do think, as we learn more, is not an accurate statement that he made in the other one I read you. But please stop with this. We're getting justice because he mocked Kirk or made light of it. I mean, I'm sure he'll make jokes like he joked about Trump's reaction where Trump didn't even have anything to say and just went, oh, look at my ballroom when someone asked him about how he's handling it. But it's a comedy show. They're as we deal with on this show, you're trying to figure out how to bring joy amid darkness. So they're going to make light in a sense. But his heartfelt response was not one of hatred or vitriol or mockery, at least from, what I'm showing you. And so I'm really once again heartbroken to see people just furthering a political goal. That's all it is. This was already a goal of theirs. Trump's hated Kimmel and he wanted him off the air and he's been attacking ABC. He just said, maybe this is a good time to play this and we'll talk about the truth behind why these local station owners made their decision. But Trump just recently threatened ABC with criminal prosecution again. That's what this is all in the interest of. Cole put this together. Let me show you.
I will also sign an executive order to immediately stop all government censorship and bring back free speech to America.
Pam Bondi's saying she's going to go after hate speech. She'll probably go after people like you because you treat me so unfairly. It's hate.
The woman just stood up and started screaming. She was a paid agitator. I've asked Pam to look into that in terms of RICO, bringing RICO cases against it, criminal RICO, because they should be put in jail.
We will absolutely target you, go after you, if you are targeting anyone with hate speech.
For those people that want to protest, they're going to be met with very big force.
The Trump administration is sending a message. If you're not going to handle your campus and the students on it, we will. And they're going to use the tools at their disposal. This is going to be a blueprint, and we're going to go after many other students like this.
They still have their First Amendment right, though. They're still out there protesting.
Yeah, well, I'm not so sure, Trump says about protesters having the First Amendment right. And we went through all the context of that in case you think he's talking about violent protesters. He specifically cited the women who yelled at him in a restaurant. That was it. As Caitlin Collins put it, shouted in his vicinity. And he's saying, jail. Please, 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 please go deep into your heart of hearts, MAGA, and ask yourself, with all of the fear-mongering you did about the First Amendment being under assault under Biden, is this really what you stand for? Come on. I know you know. That's the sick part of this all that makes me so sad. I know you know. This is an outright attack on the First Amendment. I know you know that whenever he leverages, how'd you find that? Yeah, I posted this. Okay, MAGA, I wrote, for a moment, ignore your loyalty to a team, side, or party. In your heart of hearts, are you comfortable with Trump's series of crackdowns on free speech? CBS, ABC, New York Times, etc. He just recently encouraged Bondi to bring RICO cases against protesters, specifically citing people who yelled at him in the DC restaurant. I want to believe some of my opponents still have principles. This is unacceptable. No? And for a lot of them, it's no, because it's Trump doing it. But as we'll get to later in the segment, whatever precedent you set, you have to extrapolate it to Democrats doing the exact same damn thing. So you want Fox to get this treatment? You want OAN to get this treatment? You want etc. Do you want the next president to sue outlets for being mean to him and then block mergers, give them hell with their government power to force them into paying the president, but the individual person, money as a bribe? Is that something you'd be comfortable with? People don't care. It's really sad. All right, Jake Tapper. I've done a lot of mock Raven lately, but I want to give him credit here. He broke down a little bit of the behind the scenes part of this that is extra dark. While you listen to it, please do, if you're not already, subscribe to this channel if you appreciate this content. I try not to go, Trump's going to get me off of the show. But it is a really scary time for media, for sure. And so supporting whatever shows you appreciate just in the free way by subscribing is really helpful.
So how do we make sense of the fact that late night host Jimmy Kimmel indefinitely lost his show because of comments he made Monday night in which he said that the MAGA gang was really trying hard to prove that Charlie Kirk's assassin was not one of theirs so that they could score political points? That's what he said. Well, follow the money. In August, Nextstar, the largest owner of TV stations, local TV stations in the country, announced that they wanted to purchase their rival Tegna for more than $6 billion. Now, in order for that deal to go through, Nextstar would need the approval of the Federal Communications Commission. And in fact, they would need the FCC to lift the cap, a 39% cap that the FCC has, which is a rule that states no company can own enough TV stations to reach more than 39% of the households in the United States. And this deal going through would violate that cap. the current chair of the FCC, Brendan Carr, he earlier this year said that he would be willing to entertain lifting what he called arcane artificial limits on how many TV stations any one company can own. Okay, so that's where we are. Nextstar wanting to get the FCC's approval, the FCC commissioner making it clear that his mind is open. Today, Wednesday, the FCC commissioner goes on a podcast, a MAGA podcaster, and makes it very clear that he did not like the comments that Jimmy Kimmel made on Monday night. He calls Kimmel talentless. And then he says,
so I think, again, Disney needs to see some change here, but the individual licensed stations that are taking their content, it's time for them to step up and say, this, garbage, to the extent that that's what comes down the pipe in the future, isn't something that we think serves the needs of our local communities. But this sort of status quo is obviously not acceptable where we are.
You believe that?
So he's calling on local TV stations to reject the Jimmy Kimmel show. That was posted on Twitter or X at 1:01 p.m. Wednesday. Within hours, Nextstar makes the announcement that the company's owned and partnered television stations affiliated with ABC will preempt Jimmy Kimmel because they object.
So I can stop it there. I think you get the trajectory here. Once again, just like why CBS did what they did, wanting Paramount, their merger to go through, and the FCC holding it up and investigating CBS until Trump got the settlement that he wanted and the admission of guilt and the programming changes. Same thing is happening here with Nextstar. And then Sinclair's kind of has a right-wing bias, it's understood, and was doing a similar choice. And then Brendan Carr is responding to people saying things like, this was all in Project 2025, by the way, with just memes making fun of it. So that's the weird part about this moment too, is we have to have ourselves memed into authoritarianism, which is frightening. And then you have a lot of right-wingers who are going, who cares? It's a private company, a bunch of private companies making their own decisions, ignoring the pressure from the government that I referenced to you before. Benny Johnson just confirms that any of his counterparts making the argument that this wasn't an attack on the First Amendment because Trump didn't have anything to do with it or Brendan Carr didn't have anything to do with it, he's coming out and saying, yeah, I did, and hell yeah. Benny Johnson says, time for the right to learn how to fight. This is the story of how Jimmy Kimmel was ripped off air. What Jimmy Kimmel said about Charlie Kirk is indefensible. It made us all angry, but how do we channel that righteous anger into something productive? We must focus, isolate the enemy, and apply swift, immense tactical pressure. Mean tweets are great, but they can be ignored. What can't be ignored are your paying customers organizing against you and FCC investigations. That is exactly what we did. Well, yeah, that's the problem, Benny. Do I have to do the what about if Biden? You get it. And this isn't the only part. The FCC has opened investigations into all these different liberal media institutions and has been harassing liberal media institutions on behalf of Trump. And then Charlie Kirk back in 2017 posted Jimmy Kimmel isn't funny. And Benny Johnson responded, we did it for you, Charlie. And we're just getting started. And again, I just think it's such a disservice because I felt like the Benny Johnsons and the other friends of Charlie Kirk's were just telling us that Kirk was a warrior for free speech. And very prominently, Kirk did all those debates. And those were titled as big free speech debates. And how do we defeat ideas we don't like? We argue them. So how are they so quickly doing an about face on that? Now, government pressured censorship is in honor of Kirk's legacy. It makes no sense. It's so contradictory. Trump weighed in on this. Caitlin Collins has the quotes from Air Force One. When you have a network, Trump said, and you have evening shows and all they do is hit Trump, that's all they do. If you go back, I guess they haven't had a conservative one in years or something. When you go back and take a look, all they do is hit Trump. They're licensed. They're not allowed to do that. All they do is hit Trump. 3 words later, they're not allowed to do that. MAGA? Imagine Biden saying, they're not allowed to do that about Fox or something. Then he said, Trump says because he won the election, networks give him wholly bad publicity that I would think maybe their licenses should be taken away. He tells reporters, I will it'll be up to Brendan Carr. I think Brendan Carr is outstanding. He's a patriot. He loves our country, and he's a tough guy. And then we have video as well of Trump being asked about this.
And on a separate issue, free speech, your Vice President Vance said that free speech is under attack in the UK. Do you agree with him? And Prime Minister, we saw the dismissal of a very well-known chat show host in America last night, Mr. Kimmel. Is free speech more under attack in Britain or America?
Well, Jimmy Kimmel was fired because he had bad ratings more than anything else, and he said a horrible thing about a great gentleman known as Charlie Kirk. And Jimmy Kimmel is not a talented person. He had very bad ratings, and they should have fired him a long time ago. So, you can call that free speech or not. He was fired for lack of talent.
Wrong. If you want to justify the decision by CBS right after they kept being harassed and were trying to please the Trump administration, their decision on Colbert, at least you have more there, because they're claiming it's just a business decision. Here, there's just out in the open pressure happening. Sinclair's saying Kimmel needs to apologize and donate to TPUSA and the Kirk family. It's very clearly in a narrow subject here, a part of a broader approach from the Trump administration. So you can't make that same argument. Then The View didn't say anything about this. The View's on ABC News. The View completely ignores Jimmy Kimmel's suspension, which is like the story today. Zip on ABC News, or on ABC, which hosts The View. Neera Tanden said, look forward to a future Democratic president's interpretation of public interest obligation, because that's what the FCC commissioner has been justifying all of this with. I guess maybe some of these folks just don't think there's ever going to be another Democratic administration, which please don't start saying that. That gets us to a scary place. Sounds like a less than Democratic statement to make. And if you agree, yeah, probably at some point we're going to have a President Jaden Williams. Then what do you think President Williams would do with the same, we can choose what's on the air with the public interest obligation? It's just going to be all bad reality TV shows, which apparently he likes now. Then Melanie D'Arrigo said Trump's allies now control X, Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, and TikTok. They own Fox News, CBS, Washington Post, Wall Street Journal, New York Post. They own Sinclair Broadcasting, which has 200 TV stations and local news in 100 markets. Free speech is now what Trump and his billionaire pals say it is. It's feeling a lot like that. Barack Obama weighed in, saying after years of complaining about cancel culture, cancel culture, the current administration has taken it to a new and dangerous level by routinely threatening regulatory action against media companies unless they muzzle or fire reporters and commentators it doesn't like. Yes. J.D. Vance just recently said this in February.
Our own government encouraged private companies to silence people who dared to utter what turned out to be an obvious truth. So I come here today not just with an observation, but with an offer. And just as the Biden administration seemed desperate to silence people for speaking their minds, so the Trump administration will do precisely the opposite, and I hope that we can work together on that. In Washington, there is a new sheriff in town, and under Donald Trump's leadership, we may disagree with your views, but we will fight to defend your right to offer it in the public square, agree or disagree.
He even specifically name-checked our government encouraging private companies to silence people. And we won't do that, JP says.
JP, right? JD Mandel.
And now that's exactly what they're doing. Hate to bring him into this, Rogan. I'll come on anytime. I've been hearing you're asking people about me. You want me on. I get it. I'll do it. Fine. If you want me to. But Joe Rogan, this is a headline back from before the election, predicted a Harris-Walz administration would clamp down more on free speech. Eek. Ooh. Media had this headline: Kimmel suspended for calling Kirk shooter MAGA. Don Jr. did the same thing with Minnesota shootings. By the way, I don't even feel the need to defend Kimmel's statement because that's not what this is about. And it would be another thing if he was like making fun of Kirk or something. They kept going, he said something heinous about Kirk. That wasn't about Kirk. It was about the shooter in a really confusing time where all sorts of theories were flying. But I don't even need to defend it because of the point that I just made. But he didn't actually call him MAGA. There's, as I said, different ways to interpret. And we're getting bogged down with that. But there's different ways to interpret one of yours. Because it was true. I think a lot of the right-wingers expected this person to be lifelong blue. And the fact that he came from such a conservative background is notable. Doesn't mean he didn't shift and wouldn't be classified left-wing now. But, man, the reaction is not matching the statement. And Don Jr. explicitly claimed that the shooter, Melissa Hortman, was a Democrat, even though the shooter said he supported Trump and the roommate and his voting patterns. Take Don Jr. off the air then.
Fact check, true.
Chuck Schumer weighed in.
What Brendan Carr is doing is despicable. What he did to Jimmy Kimmel, he is doing to person after person, network after network, intimidating them and threatening them. He is one of the greatest threats to free speech America has ever seen. He should resign immediately. Trump should fire him.
So it's sort of like, yeah, correct take. What? You think Trump's going to fire him? I think that makes it sound like Brendan Carr's going rogue. Brendan Carr is not going rogue. This is why Trump hired him. How about you say Brendan Carr and Trump are working hand in hand to attack free speech? I just think that I'm a little revved up. I'm sorry, Chuck, if you're getting a little bit of you're in the splash zone. I'm getting you wet. I'm sorry. But here's the problem. It does sound, right? Like Carr, sort of like how Robert F. Kennedy Jr. actually is doing things that I don't actually think Trump in some cases agrees with. So you could go, Trump, get rid of him. In this case, this is all on Trump's behalf. So don't make it sound like Trump isn't directly a part of it and would fire him. Piers Morgan said, Jimmy Kimmel lied about Charlie Kirk's assassin being MAGA. And this is Piers Morgan of Piers Morgan Uncensored. This is Piers Morgan of I'm a free speech warrior. Jimmy Kimmel lied about Charlie Kirk's assassin being MAGA. This caused understandable outrage all over America, prompted TV station owners to say they wouldn't air him, and he's now been suspended by his employers. Why is he being heralded as some kind of free speech martyr? Because the government got involved, Piers. I'm sure if it were President Kamala Harris, you would be outraged. Then this is something I want to fill you in on sort of what the defense sounds like. I've already explained some of it, which is lying that the Trump administration had nothing to do with it. The other part of it is showing clips of liberals or Kimmel specifically celebrating other media figures getting fired. And Piers Morgan responded to one of those saying, reminder, Jimmy Kimmel has celebrated endless conservative stars' cancellations with savage glee. Are we in a kindergarten class? Is this what I have to explain? This is government. This is company. Different things. Oh, that was cringy. But I never know how it's going to sound until I say it. Sometimes I regret it. And it's the same disconnection. Yeah, it's one thing if Tucker Carlson gets fired because he called his boss the C word. His female boss, the bad C word. You know, the word that you really don't use in reference to women, but you use all the time, other people in reference to their dude friends. That one. And he cost the network millions because of election lies in a lawsuit not from the government. If Biden had threatened to hurt the business of Fox if they didn't fire Tucker, that would be a different thing. After Biden had leveraged settlements through holding up mergers with other media companies, then you would have a comparison. But you don't. Then I saw Dave Portnoy who he's conservative, but he'll have different takes sometimes. And he's, for some reason, was defensive of this, saying with Kimmel getting canned, I'm seeing lots of people talking about the hypocrisy of cancel culture. Now they're redefining cancel culture. To me, cancel culture is when people go out of their way to dig up old tweets, videos, etc., looking for dirt on somebody they don't like in an effort to get them fired. Like if Kimmel got canceled for shit he did on The Man Show, that would be cancel culture. But when a person says something that a ton of people find offensive, rude, dumb in real time, and then the person is punished for it, that's not cancel culture. That is consequences for your actions. We've turned them all into previous wokesters. They're now the wokesters. It's not cancel culture, it's consequence culture. It's still CC, get it? And which, by the way, all right, let's use that logic, Dave. Did you think that it was cancel culture when there was a cancellation attempt of Dave Chappelle when he made trans jokes? Because those weren't from a long time ago. In his special, he made a trans joke, and then a bunch of the right was going, how dare the wokesters try to cancel Dave Chappelle for something? It's a comedy show. It's a comedy show. Let him make jokes. It's a comedy show.
The left wanted to make comedy illegal.
And then now he's saying, no. Cancel culture is just when it's an old statement. That's not even close to true. Y'all were always up in arms, and sometimes I was, about people getting too aggressive of a response online or in their position in media because they said one thing or they try to make a joke, it didn't come off right. But now they're on the consequences for your actions train. And I'm not even framing this as a cancel culture issue, like people are overreacting and why did ABC make this decision? My problem with it is, as I will keep repeating, the White House's involvement. Mike Nellis said, Portnoy is missing the point here. If ABC, as Kimmel's employer, had an issue with what he said, that's one thing. But Trump and the FCC threatened to revoke their license if they didn't suspend him. That's what I'm upset about. It's abuse of power, and it happened to a conservative voice. If it had happened to a conservative voice, they'd be screaming to high heaven about it, which we all know. And then the previous anti-cancel culture people are posting Colbert, canceled by CBS, Jim Acosta, canceled by CNN, Joy Reid, canceled by MSNBC, Don Lemon, canceled by CNN, Chris Cuomo, canceled by CNN, Jimmy Kimmel, canceled by ABC. We are truly living in a new cultural era. The End Wokeness lists cancellations in a new cultural era. Cancel culture. But again, I don't even care about that. Chris Cuomo, Don Lemon, Joy Reid. Now, the Joy Reid happened in the Trump era, so people feel, but Jim Acosta, a lot of those examples don't have any comparison to what we're talking about here. Share your thoughts on that in the comments.